India's misguided obsession, why we must stop idolizing America and China. India, a land of a billion dreams, is a nation bursting with potential, diversity and resilience. Yet we often fall into a trap, gazing starry-eyed at the United States and China, as if their glittering economies and global dominance are the ultimate yardsticks for success. Wake up, India. These so-called superpowers are crumbling under the weight of their own hypocrisy, oppression, and moral decay. Their systems exploit their people, silence dissent, and prioritize power over humanity, flaws that make India's challenges seem like mere growing pains. From America's prison-packed ghettos to China's surveillance dystopia, the evidence is clear. These nations are no role models. Instead, we should set our sights on countries like New Zealand, Norway, and South Korea, beacons of equity, innovation, and quality of life. This essay rips apart the myths of American and Chinese superiority, with hard-hitting examples, fiery truths, and a call to aim higher. And yes, we'll celebrate the unity India has forged under recent leadership, a spark of hope that proves we're already on a better path. America, a house divided by greed and hypocrisy. The United States loves to wave the flag of freedom, but its reality is a grim caricature of its ideals. Let's start with its justice system, a grotesque machine that chews up lives based on race and wealth. In 2020, the US had the world's highest incarceration rate, 639 per 100,000 people, compared to India's modest 33 per 100,000. World Prison Brief 2020. African Americans, just 13% of the population, make up 38% of the prison population. Bureau of Justice Statistics, 2020. The 1994 crime bill, signed by Bill Clinton, fueled this disaster by imposing harsher sentences for crack cocaine, prevalent in black communities, than for powder cocaine, favored by wealthier, whiter users. This wasn't justice, it was systemic racism dressed up as law. In contrast, India's courts, though clogged and slow, over 40 million pending cases in 2022, National Judicial Data Grid, don't target entire communities with such calculated cruelty. Take Native Americans, another group crushed by America's system. In 2021, they faced unemployment rates as high as 15% on reservations, compared to the national average of 5.4%, Bureau of Indian Affairs. The 1978 Indian Child Welfare Act, meant to protect native children from forced adoptions, is still under attack in courts, with a 2023 Supreme Court case threatening to dismantle it. NPR, 2023. Meanwhile, Hispanic immigrants, especially Mexicans, face relentless hostility. In 2019, a white supremacist in El Paso shot 23 people dead, targeting Latinos in a Walmart, fueled by anti-immigrant rhetoric stoked by political leaders. CNN, 2019. India's communal tensions, like the 2020 Delhi riots, 53 deaths, are serious, but they don't match the scale of America's state-enabled marginalization of entire ethnic groups. Then there's the free speech farce. In January 2021, tech giants like Twitter and Facebook banned then-President Donald Trump after the Capitol riot, citing incitement. Yet these same platforms often let hate speech fester when it targets minorities. In 2020, Facebook was called out for failing to remove posts inciting violence against Black Lives Matter protesters until public pressure forced action. The Guardian, 2020. Anti-Muslim rhetoric, like posts calling for violence against mosques, has also lingered online, with a 2019 study showing a 20% spike in Islamophobic content post-Trump election. Council on American Islamic Relations. India's digital space, while messy with misinformation, allows robust political debate without corporate gatekeepers playing favorites. Our 2022 internet shutdowns, 129, mostly in Kashmir, are a blemish, but they don't compare to America's corporate-controlled censorship that swings with political winds. Economically, America is a playground for the ultra-rich. In 2021, the top 1% held 32% of the nation's wealth, while the bottom 50% clung to just 2%, Federal Reserve 2021. Platforms like OnlyFans, launched in 2016, have turned desperation into exploitation, with young women pressured to sell explicit content to survive in a cutthroat economy. BBC, 2021. The cryptocurrency boom, Bitcoin's peaks in 2017 and 2021, spawned a get-rich-quick frenzy, with $3.7 billion lost to scams in 2022, Chainalysis. Meanwhile, gig workers, often black and Hispanic, earn below minimum wage on apps like Uber, with a 2021 UC Berkeley study showing median hourly earnings of $9.21 in major cities. India's inequality, Gini coefficient 35.7 versus US 41.5 in 2020, World Bank, is stark, but our cultural emphasis on family and community hasn't yet been replaced by a soulless hustle culture. America's healthcare system is another disgrace. In 2022, 27.6 million Americans, 8.6% of the population, Lagged health insurance, US Census Bureau. Medical debt bankrupts thousands annually, with a 2021 study showing 66% of bankruptcies tied to healthcare costs, American Journal of Public Health. Compare that to India's Ayushman Bharat scheme, launched in 2018, which provides free healthcare to over 500 million people, flawed but ambitious. America's opioid crisis, fueled by companies like Purdue Pharma, has killed over 70,000 annually from overdoses since 2019, CDC. In 2021, Purdue's owners, the Sackler family, dodged full accountability despite their role in pushing OxyContin, Reuters 2021. India's drug problem exists, but it's not a state-enabled epidemic orchestrated by corporate greed. China, a surveillance state stifling humanity. If America's flaws are born of greed, China's are rooted in control, a government that suffocates its people to maintain power. The Uyghur Muslims in Xinjiang are a glaring example. Since 2017, over 1 million have been detained in re-education camps, subjected to forced labor, cultural erasure, and mass surveillance. UN Human Rights Office, August 2022. Satellite imagery from 2018 to 2020 showed camps expanding, with reports of forced sterilizations and family separations. Amnesty International 2021. In 2020, Uyghur workers were linked to supply chains for brands like Apple and Nike, exposing global complicity. Australian Strategic Policy Institute. India's Muslim population, 14% or 200 million, faces challenges, but they vote, run for office, and practice their faith openly, rights Uyghurs can only dream of. Hong Kong's people have been similarly crushed. In 2019, millions protested an extradition bill, demanding the democratic freedoms promised under the 1997 Handover Agreement. Beijing responded with the 2020 National Security Law, arresting activists like Joshua Wong and shutting down pro-democracy newspapers like Apple Daily in 2021. By 2023, over 1,500 activists were jailed or exiled. Human Rights Watch. India's protests, like the 2019 Citizenship Amendment Act demonstrations, saw heavy-handed policing but no blanket crackdown on free speech. Tibetans face a similar fate in China. Since the 1950 occupation, their culture has been systematically erased, with over 150 self-immolations since 2009 protesting Chinese rule. International Campaign for Tibet, 2023. India, by contrast, hosts the Dalai Lama and a thriving Tibetan exile community. China's censorship is relentless. In 2019, the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, June 4, 1989, where hundreds to thousands of pro-democracy students were killed, was wiped from public memory. The Great Firewall blocks Google, Wikipedia, and any hint of dissent. In 2022, a single protester in Beijing holding a banner against Xi Jinping was swiftly disappeared. BBC 2022. India's media, while imperfect, is a cacophony of voices, with over 100,000 registered publications in 2022, Registrar of Newspapers for India. Even our social media platforms buzz with criticism of the government. Try that in China, and you're in a gulag. The one-child policy, 1980 to 2015, has left China with a demographic disaster, a median age of 38 versus India's 28, 2020, World Bank. To offset this, China has been accused of using forced labor, with 2020 reports documenting Uyghurs and Mongols working in mines and factories, Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Disturbing allegations of organ harvesting from prisoners, including Falun Gong practitioners, surfaced in 2019 via the China Tribunal, estimating thousands of victims annually. India's labor issues, like the 2020 migrant crisis during COVID, were chaotic but not state-orchestrated slavery. China's GDP per capita, $12,720 in 2023 versus India's $2,410, World Bank, looks impressive. But it's inflated by ghost cities and corruption, with 2021 reports estimating $1 trillion in misreported economic data, Bloomberg. Ethnic Mongols in Inner Mongolia face cultural genocide. In 2020, China mandated Chinese language education in Mongol schools, sparking protests that were brutally suppressed. Human Rights Watch 2020. Falun Gong practitioners, a spiritual minority, have been persecuted since 1999. With over 3,700 deaths documented by 2022 due to torture and organ harvesting, Falun Dafa Info Center. In contrast, India's diverse communities, Sikhs, Jains, Parsis, enjoy constitutional protections and cultural autonomy, even if implementation falters at times. More examples of America's and China's failures. America's treatment of other minorities is equally damning. Asian Americans faced a surge in hate crimes during COVID, with over 11,000 incidents reported from 2020 to 2022, including the 2021 Atlanta spa shootings that killed 6 of them, Asian women. Stop AAPI Hate, 2022. The US education system fails minorities too. In 2021, Black and Hispanic students had graduation rates of 80% and 82%, respectively, compared to 89% for white students. National Center for Education Statistics. Homelessness disproportionately affecting minorities hit 580,000 in 2022, with Black Americans, 13% of the population, making up 40% of the homeless. HUD Annual Report. China's abuses extend to rural farmers. In 2018, forced land seizures for urban development displaced 10 million rural residents with minimal compensation. Amnesty International. Protests like those in Wukan village in 2011 were met with arrests and media blackouts. India's land disputes, like the 2021 farmers' protests, saw government pushback but ended in policy reversals, showing democratic accountability absent in China. Even China's Han majority isn't spared if they dissent. In 2022, COVID lockdowns in Shanghai left millions confined without food or medical access, with viral videos showing residents screaming from balconies. Reuters, 2022. India's lockdown mismanagement in 2020 was messy, but we didn't lock people in their homes like prisoners. America's political dysfunction is another embarrassment. The 2020 election saw 159 million voters split between two parties that spent their terms undoing each other's work. In 2021, Biden reversed Trump's border policies, only for Republicans to stall his infrastructure bill, Politico 2021. This gridlock wastes billions and stalls progress. India's coalition politics can be messy, but our government pushes forward schemes like Digital India, launched 2015, with continuity. China's zero-COVID policy, enforced through 2022, collapsed in chaos, with 1.4 million estimated deaths after restrictions lifted. The Lancet, 2023. India's COVID response, while flawed, vaccinated over 1 billion people by 2022, Ministry of Health. While New Zealand, Norway and South Korea? India's flaws, poverty, 11.6% below the poverty line in 2022, World Bank, corruption, and occasional communal violence are real. But we're a democracy where voices matter, where 1.4 billion people coexist with unparalleled diversity. America and China, with their exploited minorities and broken systems, are no role models. Instead, let's look to New Zealand, Norway, and South Korea, nations that prioritize people over power. New Zealand ranked 10th on the Human Development Index (HDI) in 2022, India 134, shows what unity and empathy look like. After the 2019 Christchurch mosque shootings, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern banned assault rifles within weeks and rallied the nation to support Muslim communities. BBC 2019. Norway, the happiest country in the 2023 World Happiness Report, uses its oil wealth for universal healthcare and education, with a Gini coefficient of 25 versus India's 35.7. South Korea, once poorer than India, became a high-income nation by 2000, with an HDI rank of 19th in 2022, thanks to education and tech innovation. World Bank. These countries don't chase global dominance. They build societies where people thrive.